afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
It's a great afternoon. Bring it up a little bit. Does it? It doesn't feel.
It's kind of echoey
Yeah.
because you're far away.
Well, it's echoey also because the room is pretty acoustically lively. But I can also do this. Is that better? A little better?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a balance between, not having it in my mouth.
Right.
Which could be cool, but so yeah, welcome all. Thank you so much. Thrilled to have Ed Roberson, Patrick Morrissey, and Matthew Goulish with us this afternoon for readings and conversation. And thanks to everyone here and online. I just have a few announcement-y things, and then we'll get into it. So I'll make it quick, but. Of course, well worth mentioning, we've got books for sale by all three, so please visit the front desk and collect them all. And then a couple things upcoming that'll sort of round out the programming for this year. So on Thursday, December 11th at 7 p.m., Alex Niemi and Alta Price will be here to read from works in translation. Alex from her translation of The Endless Week by Laura Vasquez, and Alta from Ulysses About People. Fantastic books, fantastic translators, and Alex, I'm sure some in this room might know. All right, so Alex and Alta, that's December 11th at 7 p.m. Thursday, December 18th at 7 p.m., the last for the year concert in the Formation series for new and improvised music. That will be Trench and the Tontine Ensemble, two tremendous improvising ensembles. One is a trio of guitar, saxophone, and percussion, and the other is a string quartet, improvising string quartet. So Thursday the 11th, Thursday the 18th, come on back. Just block off your Thursdays, and then this show, come back. I mean, you can enjoy it now, of course, but come back and enjoy it without all the chairs and the equipment and everything as an exhibition in an exhibition space. So think something revolutionary, think change. Evelyn, Patricia Terry, Evelyn, wonderful work. Glad to have you in the gallery. I'm trying to make it quick, but I do have to mention one more thing, which is our annual poetry marathon is at the end of next month, so January 24th and 25th. I hope you will come out for that. These days, it is largely in person again at St. Kate, the Arts Hotel downtown. 2 days, 12 hours each day for 24 hours of readings, short films, musical performances, and more. So can enjoy a wonderful sense of community-driven delirium at the end of January. Okay, that's it. That's all the announcements. So now we can really get to it. So we'll have individual readings from Patrick, Matthew, Ed, and then go immediately into a conversation involving all three. To kick it off, it's my great pleasure first to welcome Patrick Morrissey, whose most recent publications are the pamphlet Makeshift from Ben Tinterstices Editions, shout out Chuck Stapleton, and the book Lightbox, Verge Books 2023, also shout out Verge Books. His essays have appeared in Annuit, Chicago Review, Commonplace, and elsewhere. In 2024, the Friends of Lorene Niedecker hosted his talk, Niedecker's Binoculars. He teaches at the University of Chicago. Patrick Morrissey's are poems marked by a, quote, patient assembly, tenuous and angled. In them we hear voices collecting in the corners, echoes radiating in unsettled quietude. We hear speech's animal ghost and look squarely into the city's every eye. From encounters with bedraggled geraniums to Cassiopeia, still up there, traffic and trains, a beluga whale in the lake, through passing seasons, sleep and wakefulness, in films and their aftermath on the mind and body, and so much more. There's a specificity and simultaneity both. Clear images arrayed so as to disrupt the linear, such that one hears, quote, all the years audible at once. All of this effected through small gestures, little agitations of the surface. An unassuming lyric subtlety that nearly belies the meticulous lineation, lucidity of image, and seamlessness of each poem's surprising juxtapositions. Morrissey's poems are often, as Devin Johnston has noted, quote, small in scale, modest in statement, yet they open a window onto surging, complex occasions. Please welcome Patrick Morrissey.
All right. Can you hear me through this mic? Is it okay? All right, great. Thank you, Mike. That introduction really hit a sweet spot for me. It's a real pleasure to be here, to see you all, and to be joined by Matthew, and also to be reading with my good friend and longtime buddy, Ed Roberson. We finally got our act together to do this reading together, so it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start with, we'll say, the news from Chicago. These are a couple of very recent poems that I think I have in memory because they're so recent. I'll start with the bad news. Border projection. The agent in his mask plays at manliness. Behold in the lens of his ominous Oakleys, a scared kid arrested within. And the good news, almost solstice. Black-capped chickadees, quick songs, ricochet, better than baubles in this almost holiday tree. And then two little sort of linked haiku, or 17ers. Televisions at night, every room a diorama of shadows. My own shadow, walking across snow, swept a moment into the squall. I'm going to read one poem from Lightbox for Ed, because I know I think he likes this one. It's called Radio. Little room lit by a neon dial, its late night station, an empty church, murmuring voices somewhere deep inside, echo or memory without source, dark as water. And then a few poems recently published in Luigi Tenco, which I saw is available for purchase. You're probably the only place in the world where you can actually buy Luigi Tenco, which is a little magazine heroically produced by Whit Griffin and Michael Klausman, coming to you from, I guess, the front range of the Rocky Mountains. Long live the little magazine, is their motto. And they very kindly published a handful of my poems that are going to be coming out in the next Verge book of mine called Makeshift. So a couple of poems from Luigi Tenco. And this first one is from my friend Chuck Stapleton. It's a Wisconsin poem. Leopold's Glasses. Binoculars hard to come by in Burlington, Iowa. Aldo stole outside with opera glasses brought from Germany. His mother's love of Mozart carried across ocean and prairie to a marshy edge of the Mississippi, where a common yellowthroat flits now through the reeds and lifts into the sky. Its tiny recitative held a moment and the eye. Warblers. I just said this to John, but Meryl Gilfillan once said to me, "A bird in every poem." Black and white and chestnut sided high in a poplar, twitch and nod along the tiniest branches, sky-streaked songs entwined with the magnolias to make a new world chorus. Treetop tanka. A Blackburnian's torch, burnished by evening sun, glows more orange than the sun itself, outlined black, burning against the night. Most of the poems here in Luigi Tenco, I put this little set together thinking about they're either about birds or about music. And this one is where the two converge. It's called Three Ravens, which is, some of you may know, is an old folk song. Three ravens. Two ravens joined momentarily by a third, a little wary, then lifting away a few notes of an old tune lent to the air. And this poem is called Southworks, which, as some of you familiar with Chicago might know, the Southworks is on the far south side of Chicago. It's an old U.S. steel plant, which is where they are now thinking they're going to build a quantum computing facility that seems ill-advised. The landscape there is it's now a city park, and it's dominated by these huge walls, ore walls, which is where they would hold iron ore that was brought down the lake. Southworks. Broken, enormous ore walls, heavy troughs, now empty, but for acres of forest. Barn swallows tracing invisible variations in gray haze roost deep into concrete. Disassembled blast furnace bells and an ingot mold simulate a sculpture bark. These Calumet River bracken ferns ring with red-winged blackbirds caterwauling. Corrugated steel slips, North American stevedores running yellow forklifts. Alternation. A heavy thumb keeps coming around, endless mobile bottom end, a little of this, a little of that, pinched in the treble. Open boxcars thumping through. Down the line, a kid pings gravel against their steel. All right, so the last thing I'll read is a little bit longer, and it is Makeshift, the poem that Chuck so kindly published as a Bent Interstices pamphlet, which they have up front. This one's a little bit longer, and as some of my pals know, I've been writing these poems that are kind of modular constructions. It's a bunch of 17-syllable lines, so each one is kind of like a haiku, but then they accrete over a long period of time, so it's kind of both a series of very short poems, but also a single long poem. These modular bits. So, Makeshift. Clouds in stereoscope astir, thunder and rain elsewhere, still deferred. An open chord gathers its overtones, held within the body's hollow. From fingertips, a light bulb's beaded chain coils plumb into the dark picture after picture. The device's eye inside my head blinking. Sparrows rifle through the hash of last year's leaves, each scrap fluttering back. Drafts, notes, a hand-drawn map scattered as if a paper house had collapsed. Sudden raindrops blur the screen, wet thumbprint the machine won't recognize. At the counter, a woman searches herself, frantic, feeling for change, the child's constant motion, little shifts, breaths, weather she carries with her, tiny pieces in a box under the bed, reassembled in sleep. This morning, this body waking like a drum kit, tumbling down the stairs. And all at once, a few notes fall into a sequence anyone might sing. Synthetic mesh flapping free from chain link, just a glimpse of some structure. A word or two marooned, a radio left on in the other room, like someone else's memory, like a child's inarticulate dream. Bits of string catch on branches, fluid lines finding shapes in the wind. For a minute I watched the pattern elaborate itself and fade, a torn page taped into the wrong place, its nearly invisible edge, displaced vibration, the source of the sound, obscure, sort of familiar, scrabbling up over a trash can's rim. A ragged squirrel reads the news, breaths suspended in memory, yours or mine, one another's other side. Your toddler shoulders get to wiggling, loosened by music's slightest touch. Bodies pouring down sidewalks, stairways. What messages in the current, noticeable only when it stops, traffic's pneumatic, monotone. A delay in the video stream pulls the face away from its words, pixels friction, slurred before information catches up with itself. Someone's cat curls around the back door, meow the tone of our daughter's now. Animal, digital, a third term might emerge in the interval. Arguments, scrawled in chalk, placards, a box of books left out in the rain. One hand washes the other in the water's continuous echo. Intricacies frayed paper, almost erased through. Some weird charge remains. Only ghosts of the city visible this hottest month on record. When the car stereo goes silent, the street freezes into a scene. The janitor with his mop, every morning swabbing gently backward. Lake waters surface like leaded glass, vision with a ripple in it. In a crowd, the boy is watchful, self-contained, eyes tracing every move. The news repeats on a 20-foot television above the street. Streaming music never stopped, but you never knew you were hearing it. A trade-off, a makeshift, a day jury-rigged from scraps of the last one. Afternoons, gray box, air thick, yet barely there, windless. A heavy page, the eye rolls along, comes to rest, watches nerves flaring beneath the lid. A network of branches shifting unseen within the leaves, quick trembling at the noise of some machine. The girl bolts, clings, little animal fear, dissolving into laughter when her brother invents another dance. Under rolling trucks, the drawbridge gives a bit, a quavering bass note. Over the water, geometry of steel, barges on their own time, a spider's web across the lens, video lit, filaments glistening. The kids practice ridiculous stories in the back seat while I drive. An idea almost there, phasing in and out, old stereo fader, loosened, cast off knobs and handles, rattling in the back of a cabinet. Again, the sun breaches the water's edge, scattering fast into light. A handful of tomatoes come warm from the vine, the last of summer. Idleness, a window left open, music and voices somewhere else. September, warblers, subtler colors. An old friend slips past through a crowd. Aster, goldenrod, western sunflower, oxeye daisy, Queen Anne's lace. All night the sound of rain rushes the street, recedes, comes rushing back in. Walls and ceiling collapse, a breath withdrawn again into sleep's deep ear. Surging beneath the surface pulls shadows east, bright clouds blown through water. I keep reading for a line I might forget I didn't write myself. Someone on speakerphone, lots and porches portioned out by L windows. His words rush ahead of meaning until he's not sure what happens next. Cars gasp, a dusty sound about its parts, hanging barely together. A second-hand song waiting in the air. All day long it's there for you. Tangled again in the silk thread of an inchworm curled at eye level. Finally, autumn, the overnight drop, everyone in the wrong clothes. Each student looks up from the same poem with the same look of surprise. Radiators hissing. The apartment shifts, groans like a wooden ship. Derelict church. Its 5-pound padlock securing sparrows and possums. A wounded child. Hospital tubes and devices. Life without escape. News images force a relentless present. There is no remedy. Piled into the nightmare car, its shattered windshield, its zombie driver, giant window, tiny specimen, sky's epic, microscopic eye, moving like weather, inevitable, enfolding what opposes. She cries out, then has nothing to say, curled up again into the dark. For hours in bed, the body keeps its vigil grinding toward morning. Impervious, monolithic day, a face there's no arguing with. Helicopters churn low along the lakeshore, ripples overlapping. Surface upon surface, the little knife holds an array of edges. Anxieties endless, hidden, gnawing, finally spits itself out. There, talking to a neighbor, bright leaves blown down around us, effortless, red and orange, oscillation quicker than the eye, recto, verso. Walking home this afternoon all distracted, my shadow leads the way, rich, bedraggled geraniums hanging on halfway to December. In some other office, an attenuated voice says, "It's all right," as if the walls had exhaled, dust, fresh fallen on clear plastic sheeting, a familiar form, blunted, such that you want to touch it, test its weight, old tune, almost nothing in my hands, the guitar's thin mahogany, skin crackles and dries, papery stuff, caught in the first real winter wind. So deeply absorbed, the boy pours himself into the figures he draws. Cassiopeia, still up there, locked into error. Life never heals. You play the long game. You let it go. You take things as they come. What then? Little branches twitching, exposed hieroglyphs brittle against the sky. Not something said, but something transmitted, articulate in the glimpse between the pages, the binding, a dilation, reading together. The kids lump themselves under blankets. Anonymous dream shapes, breathing, bits of snow suspended for an instant, visible before headlights. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you so much. Wonderful. And next, it will be a pleasure, I'm sure, no doubt, to hear from Matthew Goulish, who co-founded Every House Has a Door in 2008 with director Lynn Hickson. He is dramaturg and performer for the company. His books include 39 micro-lectures in proximity of performance, The Brightest Thing in the World, 3 lectures from the Institute of Failure, and Pitch and Revelation, Reconfigurations of Reading, Poetry, and Philosophy through the work of Jay Wright, co-authored with Will Daddario. He teaches in the writing program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. His book, Kingfisher, which was not mentioned in the bio, but a tremendous book, which you'll hear a little bit from. An extended explication of and meditation on the poem of the same name by Ed Roberson. Goulish evinces a truly remarkable attention to attention's limit, to interruption and redirection as among primary modes of poetic thoughts, but at once, with seemingly boundless capaciousness, quote, I think more slowly, I might say more spaciously, space on the page, space in the mind. It's an examination of the poem in its phenomenological and material dimensions, and when I say the poem, I do mean Kingfisher, which is examined with great care and depth of thought, but I also mean the poem more generally, the act of writing and reading, apprehension, attention, digression. Goulish's book itself is discursive and rich with the voices of fellow travelers, Lynn Heginian, Henry David Thoreau, Robert Creeley, Ralph Ellison, and more. Quote, the poets gather our uncertainties. I rely on them, my guides. And Goulish himself is guide through the act of reading and writing as an interrogation of memory, of our sensory apparatus, of the very nature of encounter. In addition to being a wonderful reading of Roberson's poem, Goulish's book prompts us, quote, to question everything our fallible thinking has convinced us that we know. Please welcome Matthew Goulish.
I want to start by acknowledging Ed Roberson, whose poem Kingfisher commanded my attention and appears at the start of, and in order to start, my book of the same title. And by thanking Sam Ladkin and both our Worst Press in the UK for the process and actualization of my book. And Mike Went and the whole team here at Woodland Pattern Book Center, which operates again this afternoon, as always, so valuably, as a haven for public creativity and sanity within which to gather here in Milwaukee and through remote networks beyond. It's a tremendous honor to read here. I imagine under any circumstance, but especially today alongside Patrick Morrissey, whose work I have read and admired, and for the second time alongside Ed, the first time 1 year ago, December 14th, at Corbett versus Dempsey Gallery in Chicago. We are here now, having survived that grim year. And poetry has played a significant part in that survival and in its celebration, in understanding what is happening, and in resisting through density of alternative values and voices. When we read a poem and comprehend what the poem has done to us, we engage 3 modes of explication: an individual confrontation with the words and their lines on the page, reading as closely as possible; a conversation with other readers about how they read the poem, a communal inquiry; and a consideration of what the author has said or written outside of the poem, and the grain of that voice. These 3 modalities gave my book its structure and contrasts. They shade into one another, never completely independent, although entirely distinct. They, in tandem with Kingfisher's grace and gravity, gave me the courage to write to the novelist Renee Gladman and the historian Michelle Arnosky Sherburne, both of whom ended up contributing to the book. and to quote extensively from an interview conducted by Limnologist. With all of that in mind, I will read 3 selections from the 2 parts of the book. The first, an intricate and solitary interaction with the poem, and the second, a conversational recollection. I always desire to trace how a poem has come to appear before me, the constellation of events that brought us together. And here recognize a 4th dimension of reading in the way we directly perceive what the poem perceives out there in the world, flying, or diving, or perching, or migrating into a further geography and history. How the poem alters our perception, the alteration, a resuscitation, and a blessing. Limni. Attention. Our words, our poems, begin by accident. This one begins with an accidental sighting along a river. When I say accident, I mean interruption, and the redirection that follows of what had been attention. Whatever had been the subject of that attention lies now beyond the scope of the poem, of no consequence, forgotten in the void of the poem's outside. Now this attention takes hold if we allow it. How do they differ, these 2 attentions? One leads and one follows. The one that leads, we choose. The one that follows chooses us. The one that follows activates us beyond expectation. A glimmer, even a distraction, already passed before it became present to us. How do we attend to it, this turning within a moment? The conflict between attention and distraction reveals apprehension's dual polarity. The redirect between the 2 we now call to pay attention with justice, the curiosity, and the even-handed, just curiosity. This second attention that follows what we never sought, it will take us where we must go if we have prepared properly to recognize it as guide. Because like the poem says, you have to be in a position to jump. Glimpse. To turn oneself around, to suggest that poetry does not begin with one's words at all, but with being accosted by that which one was not seeking. Glimpse, and it has caught you. That sense of irreality of the film running in reverse, the peripheral drop that one had no intention of seeing, dropped as an ordinary interruption to attention. Newton's apple in its fall speaks of Newton's universe. For that sidelong moment, we think we live there, then fall back up to its perch. The revelation of the impossible experience uncovers the fact of the world in the act of exceeding our mind's model of it. Correspondence. More than one friend has named as favorite the Kingfisher. When regarding birds, what exactly does favoritism mean? I wonder in particular about such attachment for non-birders. For those of us who devote our lives to this or that discipline that considers birds, if at all, only peripherally, but who nevertheless stop and notice. 2 talked to me specifically about this bird's head. Jack, an architect, texted me that he used to see them along the Boardman River near Traverse City in northern Michigan. The size of its head in relation to its length is both odd and captivating. I remember riding in a car with Iris, a horse trainer, driving near Harvard, Illinois, where she said she would occasionally spot one near that area's lakes. She described how the bird projected its upper parts forward in flight, giving it the appearance of awkward vulnerability. "I'm worried about your head," she spoke as if addressing the kingfisher. "Isn't that dangerous? Can't you pull it in?" I have a large volume to which I turn frequently, and not only in writing this. The Smithsonian Handbook's Birds of North America Western Region by Fred J. Alsop III. I have just now, for the first time, taken a moment to review all of the 9 birds that it pictures on its cover, each with its identifying name and small text immediately below the image. Acorn woodpecker, lesser goldfinch, Allen's hummingbird, red phalarope, sharp-shinned hawk, the large centerpiece, American woodcock, bobolink, verdin, and belted kingfisher. What would we call this striking collection, if not an assembly of favorites? These cover images depict 7 birds perching, one, red phalarope, noted in the book as pelagic in winter, swan-like on water's surface, and one in dramatic flight, the kingfisher, wings extended, back, head thrust forward. This encyclopedic handbook brings birds to my attention. It tells me that they exist, out there, and shares its portraiture of appearance, behavior, and migratory patterns in clinical detail with maps and diagrams. Ed Roberson's poem does something altogether different. For me, it stands in for a sighting. Maybe in this way it operates as a secular prayer to grant a wish for such an encounter. I would like to see for myself this creature's wrongness, the off-balance build that enchants not only my friends, but apparently nearly everyone. We seem to hold a special place in our hearts, we who care about such things, for asymmetries. The fiddler crab with one outsized claw, the top-heavy pelican. Do we identify with them, these perfect imperfections? Do we aspire to them? Maybe this captivation, this casual hold they have over us, and this concern reflects back to us a soul, our own, inhering in a spirit or guardian creature. It will appear at our crucifixion, if only we were to know it. As the testimonies of my 2 noted friends make clear, we must see for ourselves in order not only to believe but also to adopt, to project these creatures inward as companions. Now I wonder about those like the kingfisher, whose presence I have never experienced. The handbook describes its call as bold, raspy rattle sounds like a heavy fishing reel. Philosopher Charles Hartshorne, better known for his process theology, wrote one book that he described as an interpretation and world survey of birdsong. In the chapter on the less well-equipped singers, he states, "The Kingfisher group consists almost entirely of visually distinctive, poorly concealed birds, many of them fairly large. They live in open forests. They are mostly without music. I treasure the strange creature that I have come to know from this portrait, cobbled from any available second-hand description, and from the encyclopedic statistics like the star charts of Walt Whitman's learned astronomer, the proofs, the figures ranged in columns before me, the charts and diagrams to add, divide, and measure them. But unlike Whitman, I cannot walk out to apprehend as simply and reliably as gazing up at the night sky in 1867, the truant Kingfisher, as if the bird has a responsibility to show up for me. Until I have a sighting of my own, the Kingfisher occupies a hallowed place, consecrated like the objective of a quest, but not an object, a sentient creature with its own necessities that have nothing to do with me. I ask then, will the Kingfisher show itself to me, or anyway show itself in my presence, at a moment when I am able to pay the right kind of attention? On September 2nd, 2 days after I wrote to Renee Gladman, I cast out another line in the form of a letter on paper sent through the mail to Michelle Arnowski-Sherburne, historian of abolition and the Underground Railroad in New Hampshire and Vermont. My essay, I thought, needed one more voice to fill in the background of the final turn in Kingfisher with its tenor of heightened vigilance. The materials that resulted from this inquiry, and from the historian's extraordinary generosity in a correspondence with me that lasted 2 years, became so substantial that I will devote the next section of this essay entirely to them. But before relinquishing the floor to Michelle Sherburne, I will offer my own conclusion, a simple one to this essay, or this part of the larger essay. If the second, it remains provisional, which is perhaps best, for the restraint to which it subjects my voice. This conclusion, if I may call it that, makes of my function as a writer a tentative one, which must have in this part by now become apparent. Anyway, the conclusion is this. Reading a poem properly becomes, out of necessity, a collective endeavor. By reading, I mean considering every receivable element, from the poet's initial act of composition, the devising or isolating of its immediate elsewhere, to the material inking of the words settled on the common transport of their pages, sequenced between their covers, to the conceptual returns of every resonance, the meanings and branching interpretations, and all the impalpable tributes of context. By collective, I must mean community, however loosely defined and porous, of colleagues and strangers whom the poem brings together. The poem catalyzes friendship then, if we let it. It becomes our communion. We have the poem, if even nothing else, in common.
Pleasure now to welcome Ed Roberson, who is the author of numerous poetry collections, including Aquarium Works from Nion Editions, MPH and Other Road Poems, Verge Books, and Asked What Has Changed from Wesleyan University Press. His varied career has included work in Pittsburgh steel mills, in an advertising graphics agency, as a limnologist's assistant, and as a Rutgers University administrator. A chancellor of the American Academy of Poets and the recipient of many honors, Roberson lives in Chicago, where he has taught at Northwestern University, Columbia College, and the University of Chicago. In the poem, A Drop of Water, Roberson writes, quote, "A surface of puddles says it's raining. You can't see it falling." So then we, along with Roberson, see the impression of the thing, though the thing itself eludes and elides our senses. We find ourselves attuned to the surface ripples, but not the drops. Those motions and impressions indicative of some deeper machinations, of something just beyond our apprehension, quote, the larger networks of answers ripple. Patrick Morrissey and Andrew Pert have noted the ways in which Roberson's poetry is, quote, Patrick Morrissey, bound up with lived particulars, responsive to its environments, whether domestic, urban, or wild. To see the surface ripples, then, acutely within the frame of one's own senses, the context of a particular time and place, but a vision which also, at times, transcends both those senses and that time and place. Of MPH and Other Road Poems, Dan Beachy Quick writes, quote, "In the poem, time can surrender its mortal march to wilder horizons, east and west as one, youth and age, life and death the same. From the present's loud initials scratching into the walls, the lightness of the transitory, to the geological scale of the wilting cliff, Roberson's poetic world is alive everywhere at once through the concurrence of its, quote, labyrinthine, syntactically double-jointed lines, as Nathaniel Mackey has referred to them. To apprehend at once the ripples and the imperceptible drops, the shadow cast and that which obscures the light, simultaneously our own presence and imminent absence. Roberson's, quote, eye is not filled with seeing, with only seeing, but with understanding the light of the sight." Please welcome Ed Roberson.
Thanks everybody for being here. I all feel so welcome coming to this place. The thing that Matthew, when I couldn't believe Matthew's book when I saw it. What is this? But as I read it, one of the things that I was really stunned by, when you're writing something, you have an idea, you want to say, "Oh, Kenny, I saw this." We were, just down the Yucatan River where we all grew up. And we were talking about the river when we were kids, and then, the river when here we are, old guys, we can even afford a boat. And this crazy guy from McKeesport is I met him in college. So these families that had gotten together, these communities that had gotten together, and we're just floating down, drinking beer and shit in Pittsburgh. And I had done all this traveling and all this studying, and I was pointing out, oh, the water is doing this, that means. And I saw this kingfisher, and I explained what it was, and somehow or other we got to talking about escaping slavery. And a few years before that, I'd been up in Vermont, and I found out there was this notch that was the last stop on the Underground Railroad. And when you hit the top of this climb, you could see Canada. But you could also see behind you, down the gulch. If anybody was following, that particular canyon, for some reason or other, has all these little places, caves, the whole way up, all these little caves. So you know that if the paddy rollers are behind you, you're going to make it, because you can go into those little caves, wait for them to pass, wait for them to go back, and you get to Canada. And I did it, I just tried it. I'd have to understand this is in January in Vermont. The snow is just out. And I ducked into the caves to try out escaping, if anybody was following me. And we got in there and we laughed. It was like, you could just see everything, you know. And then you get up the top and you can see across the lake and there's Canada, you know, it's the freedom. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with floating on the Yucca-Guinea, but those kinds of things are always coming back whether you want them to or not. And when you're writing, you're trying to choose the right word, but all these other words come in, and all your friends come in, and you just, and you're disciplined for controlling that input, you know, from the world. Some people get upset by all that noise, but I like the company. And his essay was like, oh God, somebody notices. You know, that you're keeping, you're not supposed to be paying attention to the other people on the bus. You know, mind your own business. You know. My idea is I sit on the bus, I listen to your conversation. I put it in a poem. You know, I like the company. You know. And I sort of always felt guilty about that, and tried to make a politeness of it. Your grandma always look at Granny. She teaches you how to shine your shoes, comb your hair. You know, and I absorbed that. So I tried to make a decency of it, and he caught me. And I had begun to pay attention to that and try in a nice way to put that into the poems. But once Matthew's book came out last year, I said, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to talk. I've been, and it's funny, because the last 2 years, I'm ADHD, and so I'm up all 3 o'clock in the morning, you hear me calling. Just Michael tell you, just 3 o'clock in the morning, I hit send. So he wakes up with what's on the desk at 3 o'clock. So here's one of the 3 o'clock things. Archimedes, plain and simple. Dear Mike and Mark, so good to run into you on Sunday at the writers' party. In conversation I mentioned taking down some time during the day. Now these are sonnets. They're yappity, but these are sonnets. So that was the first quatrain. So these sonnets go on, and they get down to the that final couplet. And one of the things, and Patrick and I were talking about it, one of the interesting problems with poets is when you get to the end of a poem, you always have more to say. You always have, oh, I meant to, or something that because of the rules you aren't allowed to get into the poem. You know, one last word. You're only supposed to have 10 words, and you have, so you start the next sonnet. So for me, that's how I discovered the serial poem. Nate Mackey and Wright, so this sort of yappity talking to all your friends is also the basis of your education. But then you hit send and then you get some conversation back from your friends. So here we go. Ideas, images, words from the conversation I was having then, and letting it continue if you don't mind. I'm tossing you two into the game. You don't have to respond or anything. You are already who, if it becomes, the poem is, in discussion with, as whatever comes up. You know, talking to two other poets, you all talking about desire for some carrying on in life, and the scribble of it, fired up, written down, the wind, the tornado warning, the window, the opening and closing, drawing closer, drawing somewhat closer. As in closing in about its power, when it comes to and when it goes. 14 lines, hit right on the nose. Hit send. Archimedes, plain and simple. The wind is so wild, we don't even wind the windows shut. This is the entertainment of Chicago. To figure this out, if you don't want to hear the band see all night and shiver the hours away under the covers, scared, you screw. Some action around, interturning to bring the opening out into closer, until it brings the window shut. Shut up, the hollow no longer out to seeing its noise of unfulfilled emptiness out there dispersed. We find just do this stuff. We just do this stuff. We do later detailed to proof in a University of Chicago paper, or on some heads up, or some spatial listening the wind has written. This one articulation of the observation we can't get control of. And the human leg up throws up its feet, giddy into the air, as if it, in this pleasure, solving our problem with the riddle. We make fun of it. We make fun of them, fools of any reasonable answer we are given up front. As if a wound, the wind pulls out the windows we look out of. Come to the window. The horizon here, you can see what you can't see. The original glimpse, the first hint at the look of its desire, its hidden head and face and shoulders, holding out all the broad ahead, the rise up of it. You sit on it at the control of what it is you want and start everything's initial engines of the screen before you. You start its winding closer shut. The window under your control, so tightly held, of course, only the stillness blows in and out. That's what we do with your electricity after 3. Another thing that we got to talking about was translation. I'm not educated along those lines or anything, but I did try. I won't. Let me just read. Do you know the Wang Wei, about 700, 761 Chinese? The poem Deer Park, Tang Dynasty Deer Park. I don't know how to, but this is, how you entertain yourself trying to learn stuff. Deer Park. Hill, mountainous, too isolate to see a fellow, yet to hear that person's words echo reflects his shadowed brightness deep into the forest, returning his green polish to the blue, black peaks of ground moss. That's Wayne Weed.
That's Ed Roberson.
Okay, that's neighborhood fun, but this is what you have to hold me responsible for. I was reading the music, I was trying to find the Music Bureau ballads from the Tang Dynasty. I was remembering a poem that I read when I first started reading poetry, and I couldn't find the poem. I couldn't find it. But what I tried to do was to write the poem from memory. So this is the introduction. The old have earned the choice. They've done it so long, they know how to stay alive to what it is to live. Their eyes can get a take on the duty to be the perspective looking back over more of the information than anyone here in this time you come of. I am. I'm living, you have reason to listen to. It says the young have no choice but to figure it out as far as I've seen. To my advantage, I'll admit. But from what I've seen no more than we are looking at. And what we are looking at is this vast I request to fulfill. As if to dump the future from the past, as if out of nowhere you ask of yourself more of yourself to get there, the ha-ha at the edge to fill in. Some generations already enacting, providing bodies mirror for its own fodder. But further, too much to take, to a surface fill covering what nothing does. It's emptying of any deeper meaning to look over, a perspective of maintenance on these grounds of things. The many mansions yawning open. The entertaining cultures of its slaves outfitted in the revenge of its future, for its guests to be figured out. The backward, undone nest of the future bird, the eggs flown before the bird is laid. The rape threatening on the worm for the food in the cavity, in the body's cavities that travel, that is tracked into the country. Its many country mansion, the list days of its leaders last as concessions. Those things those pictures on the walls contained in booked, lining the shelves to that history. The old have a duty of the blood relatives, the choice to pay the armies of its visits to the prisons, in and out. I used to live where the women waited to get on the bus to go to Rikers Island. And this is the poem that I said, the title of the poem, as I remember it, is Red Silk Woven Carpet. The country girl's toes are almost bloodless, becoming white with the cold. Cocoons with no silk left after taxes. Making the taxes, even a scarf to cover her feet. The palace girls wearing the white silk stockings, they slide warm like the steam of tea offered like scarves over the red silken carpets. This rewrite is what I remember reading from it, from the Music Bureau ballads. The idea of such a thing was Chinese enough, but the thought of not being worked for somebody else as being comfortable, that wore the same chill on me brought up. It could almost be translated just by the colors. The Music Bureau ballads, the emperor realizing that there was a distinction between the art in the courts and the arts in the countryside, assigned 14 of his aristocratic poets to go out and collect the ballads from the people. And that, what they brought back constitutes the first Chinese anthology. Which they think, most folks think is the first anthology, national anthology ever collected. That's the Music Bureau ballad. And this young girl, country girl, has that thing in there about, I don't have silk for my feet. I paid my silk for the taxes. She's wearing them. And when I was learning to write, it was that you could put those two pictures together. The I have, and now you have it, and that's the national, that's the country. But you can put those images together back in the 60s, side by side, and you don't have to say what Leroy Jones wanted you to say. You know, you shut the motherfuckers up by putting the two of them side by side. I'm trying to explain that the image, if you make the image honest, accurately, and heartfelt enough, just the structure of its placement has a bigger mouth than you can write, is what I was trying to say, that the structure will speak, the placement will speak for you. So, you know, I started to come back to that. Folks, and again, sonnets. You gotta have some order in your life. Folks do not appreciate being pimped.
Yeah.
But it's in English, our English. The limit, how much, how big, the back off into someone else's diamond, distraction to trick them what they want to limit. But the limit does come up. The spot-on orgasm for all the everything covered finds its ass hanging short of the intended mission, its hit of enough having blown off, leaves, a never partnered there. The can't, don't depend on, can't depend on, wrote both ways. Well, folks can read that. The basis that amount to, ain't no guarantee, no money be turning cheeks up. But we got our own lines of trust. Remember I said, listen to people on the bus, your phrases, you know. Yes, she says, but they also, and you get off the bus and you're, and it belongs in the newspaper. Wherever we are, hanging out, whoever, whatever to drive, we are the limb, the strange fruit's language, the strange fruit's song hangs on this country. The fairness of that wrong to pay when we have no generosity in its heart for us to share. The best we can do is load up, done now, for the future. What generosity we can, what we can shore in our time, but already is in short supply. Our belonging of any freedom we come from, our root in the loose earth as far back as even where it first even gathered for earth seeing, all of this for? It's people. I started out reading ancient poetry, Book of the Dead, Mahabharata, Sue Wardak songs, bare moon fishes. You have it all to yourself because no one else pays attention at this hour. The lake is an invisible black edge of the earth that a glowing gold claw pierces to draw off from the dark rest of the sky. Up along the line, its crescent moon sides, its circle around the earth, silver as a fish. On this spinning line, you can reel in to some sense for yourself, or let it rip open in yourself the darkness that swims your blood, wild, wild in its whirling uncaught. One of the first surprises was reading some of that material was there was a whale song, and it was, I'd never read anything in the voice of an animal, and I forget which of the peoples in the American Northwest said written it, but the shock, the wanting to reach outside yourself and realizing that there are folks who can write really beautiful poems and talk in the voice of animals. That set me off on learning how to deal with this stuff too. The fishing, now slicing its loaves. Go over the bony record of those however many fishes he used to feed us. Well, now he just watches. The kinds have come up with we used to dare him to. Well, now that same of them puzzled our thought experiment. An experiment we have made questioning. Instead, the fish swim from our bread. What do you want us for, they ask. What because of this noise, our feed was lost for us in that depth, the body of. These lines we are trying to keep going. It has its ups and downs, left and right, going on from then place to now space. It could, a levitating globule itself, act out of dropping into itself, to make fun in the middle, held out selfie, glazing, globe, a globe crystal, a ball that melts back into, and it picks up a fluctuation. Behold, beyond any of its anti-factors. This is big, this is the deep stuff of gravity, where we are heavy, we are told that the line curves, and things get fishy, eaten, black holes returning out of nothing, opening, looped, catching up back, whole through itself. The fish are eating in and out of that hole. Upside, the other side of the upside of the head, hit upside up. Yeah, okay. I like music. But the ha-ha, which is British, not American, but it's one of those things where you know when you're reading along and you see the stuff that is in your culture, but you say you know that. I try to get that kind of stuff into the poems too. This open, perhaps this is where the light pours in from. The appearing and disappearing bounce, reverbing the structures. The landscape's dance, contesting itself back and forth through the tagged horizon. head split open, shut up, oh, shut up, loop through and out its own oscillation. Its singing voice is saying, is that opening loop back through itself bounced back the further, yet not forthcoming as yet, a black hole gravity has rolled itself into and out. Black hole hid in Aretha Franklin's Here Comes the Sun. The kids on the corner, no mountain high enough to get down. Their mama and their papa's immigrant charanga. It strings, a blind caravan, rich, precious sound. Stone dance long, all day long thing, a ring circle, a gathering, plasmodial word dance up which the lines of that circle string through, back into hell and back its groove, the huge clouds of dust, of mess, of age news, from the people's shit, the dancing moves, from scat to skilled, figured trail, animal up into stars, a forestry of galaxies burst into its night sky, wonder and wander to stagger over landscape across its mind as if the tide that spins itself loose escaped that dark bait. I'm playing there with the idea, you don't go through the physics of it, but the photographs you see of a drop added to a still surface that produces a return drop. And everybody thinks that return drop comes out of the silent surface. But the silent surface throws back the original drop. And that's always a surprise to people, you know, that it didn't get in. It didn't get in. But there is a process of dissolving and melting. It actually dissolves. It doesn't enter into the surface water. It's that piece that you see come up in the middle. This is the original drop. That piece is coming. Those two are exchanging. They're dissolved. This one is dissolving, and this one is receiving. And what you see go back into, that's the two of them together. But it didn't get into the whole thing. Something came up. It's weird physics, let me tell you. And to read it, it's about 6 pages long. But it is really exciting. It's not what you think you see. And that's what, I think it was Derek Walker who talked about things aren't what you see, and I forget how he said it. Things aren't what they seem, everybody knows that. But how to write that doubt, and the steps through that doubt to understand it is one of the really interesting things to try to handle in the poem. A sequence of three odic, strophe, antiphon, echo, three swans, and then the sequence. Poems on an impending coup. Did they know what they did, or which they have given us to the rest of us? It was a huge question for the sequence. Have they as stupidly given the generals the cue to military coup as they are now giving all the answers to the question we have always never seemed to get? How could these historical Hitlers and South American disappearances have been allowed to have happened? Was no one saying or asking, but, well, someone was just saying. It turns out someone is saying, and always getting silence with it, which is itself a major indicator of something unspeakable, death of belief in utter disbelief, which they have given the rest of us, this silence. It is when no one has any more to say that one acts, which is problematic. When it isn't known what has happened, once the said connection had closed, where any act ignored its stand, unnamed, it insists itself and grabs or tries to grab where it will be, what is called, what's happened. Well, the case opened, in fact, all the names to believe, changed on identities, retained into properties of negotiable value, but only to the mercenaries. Where the defense is no longer a responsibility, but rather a business, a private enterprise. It's a war. The war entered with all the other things in the economy. Life then has a floating value. Instead of the honor, the put-uppers of, the funding for the games are the winners in their own fix. The sponsors are uncalled criminals, yet floating like a butterfly. A bar, judges, that caterpillars may mind they may mind the tilt of your houses, the terminology generally uninterpretable. The white swans of venality sail, it's unknown if still water, or the still stop-motion explosion of the glitter of the water that's blown up. Quiet as it's kept. The ones that call they bitches in public, to show they tell them they gone to work down in the streets. Everyone's in the room listening, knows they the ones that loses. They lose, they bitches, they controls in the end, not just their control, they bitches control, quiet as it's kept. Magical realism. The bloodless coup of the discreet generals now seated, overthrowing their leaders from the respect of the people, was carried out by the leaders themselves, by their own example order of leadership, called to a gathering, a reckoning unnecessarily, in an already precarious union between the two being and acting equally as one. Unlike the blown-up Botero generals of recent caricature, these composed authenticities blankly represented themselves against the loudly covered emptiness of those ordering them in the frame. A stark asymmetry, the vision of an order of control restored without a single bullet fired. They returned it in justice and in silence. Through these armies and power for centuries, it's been the president's wife. A president's wife is wearing my steps. This is where the red silk carpet led me. The president's wife is wearing my steps through the pricking rows, my bent over working cotton, to keep her uptight butt unstuck. Uptight toes warm, her said delicate ankles also. Kick up the tax for her. I paid what she wears in work, as these taxes are high. And these centuries old fashioned, we women paid armies with our bodies, working its fields and having often only in some, the sons to collect. The drag out fit drag soldiers, women make, piecing their sons' bodies back from the killing fields. Whole fields of their finery to be understood as whose? As addressing some or one standing on a stage, in or not, dressed in or not. When generals see they are the president's women. Some shoe slips on another foot. This stepless shift in fashion is also quiet as cotton. In the field of dances, the people boogie down on the heads of dictators, almost unknowingly, their heads bagged. Sent home too in a plastic vote of its body. Whatever it was, son's glory, it stood for, at some time no longer recognizable. Due to the taxes of time, time pays, yet holds you too. Its wheel, sharpening, plows or swords or whatever into its shares, passed out, sent home. What do generals do, seeing the shoeless women being? This is the speaker's response. I wish to return the satisfactions with myself I gave myself. I have become somewhat ashamed of them at this age, in this trumped out age, rather than truncated by usual time. Even blind survival somewhat has turned up a shamelessly infantile card, a little long on the stake, overbidden in riddle, benighted as for truth, precedential, non sequitur, what said, I wish to recall that shit. 2 answers to what it takes. The I'm sorry punchline to the joke about punching the button that blows up everything for not paying attention might be on the tip of your tongue, recalling the leader the joke was supposed to be about, but isn't really. There were many fingers on your tongue, playing the language to its end. The culture has of its tendency also to lie. You may deny all of this and sing like Peter could preach. Well, he said that when Lomax asked the Parchment Farm chain gang leader what it takes to make a great leader. A great leader preach, but it has to be done experience. We're all good leaders. Now that we've said nothing or led others to feel the silence of us for it, and listening to the echo time hills of history, antheming there over all is to win, we hear reboot its steps over us, or whether we like it or not. We start lost among the reasoning of seasons, and in the also silence of justice, as just after a rain, a storm, a hurricane, a backwash balance brings something to its senses, whatever that is, left or our right to lead like a seaweed. Could it be that leaders create what they are to lead out of principle and out of personal purpose of once? And that union, not the whole people, but the leaders were, then what? If he doesn't care about what he says, let alone lies, a land, a people, a future on its own world where they are washed up the sea. Second ode, what I'm asking you is not only whether you see the politics in the poem as accurate to the political situation going on, but also whether you see the poetry on the money. For example, whether you see the use of the idiom on the money as a good metaphorical investment of the poet's ink. I hope it opens a rich information on connections between economic and political policy in the alignment of the poetry and its structures on judging politics. If the formality of the art weighed too heavily on the poet's damning judgment on its politics. What kind of statement is overwrought? What kind of statement is overwrought? If the backhanded behavior and lies are on record, as modes of operation are offered, as the manual taught by its subject, the records hold tight. As subject to literature, the language to the subject, appropriate to disrespect, upholds the letter of the office to the author of the precedent currently being sets up, back-shagging portrayal of the brotherhood of his people. Echo. The slavery, the president of a company sells his worker down the Mississippi into having run off when he offs with their social security by shutting the knives of their clan, disguised sister, into the top of the royal casket he closes, like a property, like a gift of the greatness given them. Do I need to go on with this shit? This kind of ridiculousness about us to see how distant from the retrieving body of a nation, from its self-interesting flood and back to life, to attention, to a basic sun. This is taken from the pyramid eye cat, the dollar on the dollar, the dollar on the dollar. This is the explanation of the epo. The epo is of the Egyptian creation sword. Nut, the night mother, has twins, twins, Set and herself, and the other Osiris and Isis. Set gifts Osiris with a beautiful sarcophagus, which is studded with weapons, induces him to try it on. Set throws Osiris's cut-up pieces into the Nile. Fishes eat everything but O's penis, which Isis finds lodged in a floating cedar in the delta. She kidnaps the sun. Her ransom is Osiris is the form of fertilization from the sun god Horus, who brings back the sun daily, headquartered somewhere in the runoff along the Chicago River, where Set has erected a very large tower in an attempt to catch and stop it. Each morning, all indication of legend record he has failed. Yours, Ed R. From that Ed R. is and I sent it from my iPhone in the middle of the night. So what started out as poems ends up into comes back again into an iPhone text, and that's really the thing that I play with about the monetary stuff at the end. Really is a take of the Egyptian creation myth of Osiris and Isis set in Nut. You can read it right in the pyramid text. And the tower that Set builds in trying to, well, Trump Tower, trying to recatch the sun. In other words, I just rewrote the myth, in terms of today's headlines. You don't want to believe that shit you read in the Fox News? Read my shit.
Thank you so much, Ed. Fantastic. Yeah, there will be a conversation to come too, but please, we'll take a little intermission. We've got some snacks outside in the front, and replenish your plates. Thank you all so much. Wonderful readings. Absolutely beautiful.